Okay, I've been looking at different family trees. As I said, I had was doing the theme right now of Camelot, which starts, excuse me, with Victoria and Albert, with the British, because we're still living the same paradigm of the Victorian era, and the Elizabeth II era has just been a repeat of that. And I mean, Albert did have a vision, and whether that was totally implemented before he died is debatable, but he did have a vision. And Victoria, she was such a pampered little princess. She didn't know how to deal with any problems, not with her children and not with the country. And she went into recluse. I mean, if she was going to go into recluse, she should have handed over to her son. I mean, Elizabeth II has kind of gone down that same trajectory with Prince Charles. In fact, the attack on Prince Andrew is just as political as Governor Cuomo in disempowering. I mean, in the case of British royals, this goes back centuries, and you know, they're the feudals versus the monarchs, and then it was followed by the industrialists, and then the Teggy liberals. So you know, it just can't change names. Of course, the Americans get into the game much after the British. So that's where I go into the Kennedy family. So I looked at, I mean, these are still, I mean, I have this in pencil, so it's kind of hard to see. I'm gonna scan it and put it on there, even if it's in pencil, because I still have to write a lot of stuff in here. So this, you know, I mean, I start with the British royals, and I, as I explained, I go for the British royals, the Greeks, and the Spanish, because those are kind of the three European monarchs that I'm using, because the Greeks do Queen Sophia of Spain, Juan Carlos's wife, was from the Greek family. So I go into that, which started with Victoria, the eldest son of Queen, the eldest daughter and eldest child of Queen Victoria. So, you know, I go, and then starting, well, because I do go, because the last of the Hanovers is George III. That's the American Revolution. And then you got the French Revolution, which does set the stage a lot. And where I keep on getting into the vindication of John Dickinson, because the success of the American Revolution also helps set the stage for the French Revolution, which just got into a bloodbath, and the Napoleonic Wars, which set the stage for World War I, then World War II, and now we're going for World War III, is basically my point in that. So they've been in the game for, you know, at the lead. So they do need to take the lead. This is also, I think, the disempowerment. You know, Elizabeth II is at the end of her reign. So, you know, it is to disempower the British royals. And I mean, I saw this debate going on when I lived there in the 70s. So this is nothing new, and nothing new to me. You know, I kind of was always like, just a bunch of pomp and circumstance, which it is, and that's why I think, you know, Prince Charles will be a good king. And I think, and I don't think any of the royal family or Charles would have a problem. It needs to be sort of a team effort between Charles, Andrew, Edward, and William. And Harry needs to be liberated from that viperous woman that has him in his snares. So here's one of my drawings of the three little pigs. It's all my attacks on the feminists, I can assure you. My other favorite is, well, I got two. This one. I don't know, you can see the feminists in there, and on the lioness guarding her cubs. I've got a couple of other lionesses in there. This one came out pretty good. The other ones are not so great, but I'm not trying to be another, you know, great artist. I'm just trying to keep my sanity in this insane world. And here also, I don't know if anybody can guess who these different players are in the game, but the White Queen, I guess God didn't name me Queen Bee that everybody's transformed into Queen Bee for nothing. But so that's how it goes through the the British royals. As I said, well, here, this is my family trait. Actually, I was working on this yesterday. It was interesting. A lot of gaps, because this does start in 1571, so the 1500s, with Thomas Wilcox and the admonitions to Parliament. Then there's another Thomas Wilcox in the 1600s. I don't get the exact date of the publication of his. It's just his birth date, and it's Drop of Honey in the Rock Christ. It's got a couple of different names. But then I see, as I say, I don't think you can see, but then I go into what I can first find. There's a Daniel Wilcox that was in Rhode Island, but I know, and then there's a Daniel Wilcox as well. So that's 1632 to 1703. I mean, you don't get the dates exactly when they came. I mean, I can only afford the free account. It doesn't give you much information. When these platforms started several years ago, it used to give me a lot more free information, but not these days. Now they've become very popular, but people need to start looking at these platforms, not just to a topic for your tea parties or your you know, cocktail parties or something, but you know, look at what this country was founded about, the principles upon which it was founded, and where you are today. So you know, that so there was, you know, there, Massachusetts, Rhode Island particularly, I think the Wilcoxes were, but then there's the Dickinson family That's from founding father John Dickinson. My paternal grandmother, her mother was a Dickinson, her father was a Paul. Now, Paul gets into the same family as John Paul Jones, but the lineage would date back to Scotland, connected lineage, because John Paul Jones never had any children. His brother, who lived here, had, because Jones was added later, he was considered a pirate. I think he did that to protect his family's name. His brother had 2 children, but this goes back years ago when I was looking at this. So as I say, that would have gone back to the Paul family in Scotland. Dickinson, I don't know when that family exactly came. As I say, I can't get much information. I got no budget. But what's interesting, well, then he was married to Polly Norris. Now, this is where I'm trying to also get into, in fact, my mother, she had 3,000 books before they got sent to the nursing home, and my brother reduced it down to 100. Most of it was with her notes, but it was really getting into the influence that the women had in the lives of these men, and the different things that were going on. So because this, Polly Norris, she was a prominent and well-educated woman at the time. She had, substantial real estate holdings, which I know Dickinson, and I'm sure it was that marriage, it made him one of the wealthiest men in the colonies at the time. He had the most to lose. But it was a Quaker family, and there were loyalists, and so, but one of my favorites, what was it? I forget where it's marked here. I don't know. Oh, John Adams. He said at the dinner table at Dickinson's house, if I should have such a wife, I should have shot myself. Now, John Adams, this is another stuff that I get into in all of my analysis of the founding fathers, but I won't go into all of that. So then you have, Dickinson, who Polly's parents were, but at the same time, well, this gets into about a century, well, no, 60 years later, this gets into, and this I'm curious to find out, there were Wilcoxes that moved down to Alabama from Connecticut. This is one Lieutenant Morgan Wilcox, 1790-1840. He was born in Killingworth, Connecticut, and he was killed in the Creek War. And Wilcox County, Alabama, is named after him. I mean, I'm hoping I can get some, because there were quite a few Wilcoxes in the area, and this is where my grandfather was born. But then there's another one, 1814 to 1874, Westbrook, Connecticut. Died Meridian, Mississippi, but he was buried in Choctaw, Alabama. So, because they were also quite a few of these family members that, were born in that Alabama region, but were living in Mississippi, I'm sure, for, commerce or something having to do with that. But there are several that after their deaths, they died in Mississippi, but then they were buried in this area of Alabama. So, you know, there's a gap there. Of course, again, my grandfather, Curtis Parker Wilcox, he was born in 1886, died in 1961, born Choctaw, Alabama, died Jacksonville. Now, he was the first white lawyer to successfully defend a Black man in the Deep South. Sorry, these things are not getting very clean. In the Deep South in 1910. And Congressman Taylor of Alabama, this was Butler, Alabama, was so impressed with his argumentation in the case, and this was his first case out of law school, that he brought him to Washington to do intelligence work, spy work. Now, I know my grandfather also was under MacArthur. He was a reconnaissance officer in the First World War. You know, so as a, you know, I've got my father. I mean, if he was alive, he'd been given a voice. He could, you know, it was amazing. Not only did he know, you know, American history and European history, but like the American history, the wars, like this Creek War, oh, he'd be tell you who the Indians were, you know, different sides, all of these different skirmishes before the Civil War between the Indians and you had the British and the French who were playing the Indians off of each other and had them in their camps. So he would tell you, you know, this battle, that battle, and then the Civil War as well, and World War I, World War II. I mean, he was a walking encyclopedia. I mean, breaks my heart. Knowledge that was lost. But so, and I always think, you know, if the NAACP, because that was the same year, that was Du Bois, W.E. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington, and that was the NAACP was formed that time. There was a discord between Du Bois and Washington, and I mean, I pretty much vindicate Washington. I'm always like, well, if you hadn't gone down the affirmative action road that has just produced absolute cacophony, which has been convoluted with the managerialism stuff and the feminism stuff, and concentrated on, like, well, what's this guy about? What's going on? Like, how did he argue this case? And the prosecutor in that case was a bully he had grown up with. I mean, these are small towns. Bully he had grown up with in school, had known him all his life. And I'm pretty sure this is the one that he told my father that if you ever get in a fight with a bully in the schoolyard, make sure he punches you in the nose, because it produces lots of blood and he gets really scared and runs off. So, and this prosecutor had told my grandfather when the whole thing started, we're hanging that N-word up bad. And my grandfather was like, I guess he was like, no, it's not gonna happen. So see, all of this challenging the courts and challenging authority. Oh Lord, that's so much in my blood. Not even funny. My mother used to tell me growing up, that I would argue with God, and I would always respond to her, I would if he was wrong. I also wanted to add, and you think you're God, but you're not. She would have slapped me. But so then that was my grandmother, Martha Jane Paul, 1892 to 1985. Not sure what year they were married. So as I said, her mother was from John Dickinson's family. Her father was from John Paul Jones' family. Then there was, some siblings. It's a weird family. So let's see, there was a Clemmy Parker. That was my grandfather's father. And then Curtis Nash. Oh, I even have a photo of him. So that was Kurt. This is my grandfather's grandfather, Curtis Nash. With the glare. And he was the one who was from Connecticut and then moved down to Alabama. And as I say, I'm curious why there was an obvious movement at this time from the northern branch of Connecticut to the south. And it's normal that you have family members who are living in that region, you'll go to that region, and there are a lot of Wilcoxes there. So anyway, I was looking into that, and then of course there's my father, who's cardiologist and world renowned for his research in thrombosis, which I've been desperately trying to get in the hands of the right people, particularly with this, the thrombosis stuff that's going on with COVID. When I saw the hands of the Kawasaki disease, I was like, oh my Lord, these are the hands that I've seen my entire life in my father's publications on his profile. We have the documents there of my father's research. He's not around, but I made sure my brother kept those and get those into the right hands. And everybody says my father was right. Hell, at what, 85, 86 years old, he's diagnosing, my mom's medical problems, plus my brother's girlfriend's medical problems, which have all of the others stumped. Why? Because my father always did a thorough job. Oh my Lord. The summers that I worked for him in Louisiana, when he'd be in with a history and physical for a patient, and he'd always be late because he'd be stuck at the hospital with a patient that he couldn't leave. And I always tried to explain to the people, because really most of his patients all my life were seriously ill, people. A nurse that was at the memorial ceremony said, when a patient would wake up and see your dad next to them, they'd be worried because they knew they were really bad off, but they also knew that they would survive because he was there. And there's another thing, more family balance, and it's 24/7 with your smartphones. And I'm like, look, when it's a patient that might die if he can't get hold of my dad, I get it, and I'm not going to complain. But if it's some stupid BS that can wait until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, it had no place here. I spent too many times. In those days, we had the beepers, and we spent, oh my Lord, how many hours looking for phones. My dad had to call the hospital, and we ended up sitting in the emergency room parking lot waiting for him. Or, oh, I knew all of the waiting rooms at the hospital, and all of the nurses, the people there knew us, and we'd sit there and color and whatever, waiting for my dad. But that goes with the territory. And as I say, that's comes with the territory in that situation. But the 24/7, gotta stop. So, oh gosh, I've been looking into the Kennedy family. I've got this book. I did start reading some of that, but see, this is your typical dysfunctional example of the dysfunctional families that have come in the aftermath of the whole colonial, because the colonial settlements were really based originally. It was the Puritans, the Quakers, and those were the ones in power. In fact, they were deposed in New York society and Washington society, which by the time Washington was built, because before that was Philadelphia and Boston society, and maybe that was also why they built Washington, to try and have a balance with North and South, so that your out society and your ruling elite wouldn't be concentrated just between New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. So the Kennedy family, of course, was during the influx of the Irish immigrants during the potato famine there, and that was it was horrific. However, and they were considered drunkards, lazy, con artists, and that much of that probably has to do with the extreme poverty and hunger that was going on, because this is one of the things that I've gotten into for decades. I mean, it goes back to Colin Turnbull. He was an anthropologist who didn't have a PhD, so of course he's been very polemic whether he was really an anthropologist. But I'm like, excuse me, I don't have a PhD in any of this stuff either. I'm sorry, I can chew you people out, chew you up and spit you out, one by one. But it was The Lonely African, and it was about this tribe. Apparently it was during a time of extreme famine, but children at 3 years old were sent out to survive for themselves. They might, you think, my God, but it was survival of the fittest at its worst. And we have seen this in too many places. I saw it in Haiti. So you do have to understand, this does also reverberate from generation to generation to generation, particularly if it's not addressed. by public policies of a government, which it wasn't, because the public policy was basically send us your huddled masses and we'll exploit them. We won't starve them to death like you guys are, but we'll oppress them and exploit them for as long as we can. And of course, this created a lot of friction and tension between the arriving, because by this time you did get, let's see, I've got some dates here. Patrick Kennedy. Yeah, they were the ones who immigrated. They were born, it was 1823, 1858. His wife, Bridget Murphy, 1824 to 1888, but both of them were born in Ireland and came. And that's when you have Patrick Joseph Kennedy, who was Joe Kennedy's, who was the ambassador to England. Later on, that was, is that the events? Yeah, that would have been the events leading up to World War II. So, but see, Patrick Kennedy, this is where, because it's always been a question of where did the Kennedy money come from? And it's true. And when I Google it, you go in and all of the speculations in addressing the issues are pointing the finger at Joseph Kennedy, JFK's father. And I have to agree, no, you look at Joseph Kennedy's profile, no, what happened was, so Patrick, PJ Kennedy, his family, so they were here, his parent, his parents had come. Let's see, I'm not sure if he was born here or not, but I do believe he was. And his father died, but his mother owned a grocery store where she also sold liquor. And his sisters, he had older sisters, he was the youngest. And he went to school, and then at 14 he went to work on the docks, which at 14 at that time was kind of like a high school education, if not a bachelor's degree perhaps a bachelor's degree these days. So his mother, obviously, she was obviously an extremely industrious woman, entrepreneur. His older sisters, I'm sure, worked and helped run the store. Then he worked on the docks. He saved enough money to invest in a saloon. Now, this is before Prohibition, but this is the Gilded Age. So, this is kind of my problem with all the restaurant owners and all these event planners and all of these venues in Washington, is that that function used to be carried out by the ruling elite women, who actually took an interest and cared about who was being invited to the parties. Now, all of these people, is just make money, make money, make money. So PJ, he, again, industrious, but savvy in, okay, how am I going to make money here? because that was obviously his objective. Then he bought a second place. So, you know, it obviously did well. And this also gave him the entry into the political process. I mean, of course, he probably, you know, would have been more accepted within the Catholic community than the other, but this does give a rise to the Irish Catholic political influence in Boston at the time, which not a minor influence. And so, yeah, and I have to say, yeah, he was savvy. I mean, you know, as I keep on saying, if I had stayed here in the 80s during the golden age, there were opportunities all over the place. You know, if I had stayed in the financial markets, yeah, I probably would have gone into hedge fund management. Going, oh no, you guys, I'll watch from the sidelines and watch a shit show and gamble on that. And I can assure you, I would have done very well. But I would have sold my soul in the process, like a lot of people I know on both sides of the pond. So, you know, it's this question of immigrant populations. I mean, this is the same that I have with all of the immigrant populations in Washington and throughout the United States, but also in Europe. I mean, I'm an immigrant in Europe. I mean, paradoxically, I also have French blood somewhere along the line. That's from my mom's side. But my mother's maiden name was Scallon, Irish Catholic all the way. And this is where I get into my stuff with the Kennedy family and my parallels with Ethel Kennedy and my mother and Carrie Kennedy and my sisters and Caroline Kennedy as well, and the rest of the Kennedy, you know, kids of my generation. We're no longer kids, and now they have children of their own. And the Kennedy family was involved in, because so PJ, that was the Gilded Age, and he made, you know, I'm sure he made money, and then he also became influential. But I think also he was savvy, because he must have seen it was all of this, because he died in 1929. So that's Prohibition was 1920. So he in 1898. As again, I said he wasn't stupid, because this is almost 20 years before Prohibition. And he started a whiskey importing business. This is surely from Scotland. In fact, I saw an article about the how the importing the Scotch whiskey importation into the United States. I mean, of course, it was coming through the Caribbean, Canada, just like the cocaine and all the other drugs when they make Prohibition. And what was it? I forget, it was Jamaica or something, went up 4,000%, because what they were doing was, you know, from Scotland, exporting it to all of these satellite countries, and then it would be brought in by the smugglers, and you know, particularly amongst the ruling elite, just like with cocaine, you know, the more expensive and the more exclusive it was, you know, the more you could show your pomp and circumstance in your what do they call those, the speakeasies. So you know, because the question becomes, what happens to those saloons when prohibition started? Of course, that business had to go underground and go black market. So it looks what probably happened was, you know, whether the saloons, they continued and just, you know, served food and weren't, because where you make a lot of money is on the alcohol. You know, that's a possibility. By that time, he had divested into the whiskey importing business, which skyrocketed. Now, so Joseph, and this makes sense again. Look at The Godfather. You know, what the Godfather had wanted for his children was for the family to get into legitimate businesses and get out of what they were doing. Because, you know, these groups of people are coming extremely poor. They see the American dream of where everybody can become rich. And so they just grab onto the golden ring. So see, Joseph, and there's a cousin, I think it's a cousin of Joseph, who attended this school as well, the Boston Latin School, which would have been elementary, I guess. So I'd be interested in finding out who, you know, what the other Kennedy family members who are coming in at that time, because these communities are insular and isolated, and as I say, a lot of times you do have a lot of these same family members that would have left the old country for the same reasons. So he attended Boston Latin School. He was popular and athletic, but not a good student. So this is Joe Kennedy, JF's father. He went to Harvard College, worked hard to be social leader, and entry to Hastings Pudding Institution. Okay, this one was their motto: cherish feelings of friendship and patriotism. It was established 1792. But then there's the other one. Oh, then this is at Harvard, because that was Harvard College, which would be a secondary school. Then, so this would be at Harvard. He was in the Delta Upsilon frat, but he was blackballed from the Porcelain Club. Now, the Porcelain Club, when I read about this, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, you guys over at Harvard. It still exists. So it was established in 1791, because it has to do with, I have to pull it up, but it has to do with pork, a pig. And this is how the club got started. Now, this was established in 1791. And there was Robert Treat Paine. So this got to be what's his name? Paine's first name is, I think it's Thomas Paine. It's escaping me, the founding father Paine. Who I quote in my letter to Prince Charles which does a comparison of John Dickinson's view of the British monarchy and legal system and political system versus Thomas Paine's. And Thomas Paine was once again from a poor family, and I think he immigrated when he was in his teens, so came alone and had a beef. So I mean, you can't, yes, this is a reality of people, but also John Dickinson's was a reality, and it was based on okay, we have a lot of problems to deal with, but let's discuss them and arrive at a peaceful situation through dialogue and debate, rather than all of you people are just a bunch of scumbags, which, I mean, so much of it in Europe was the pomp and circumstance and the laissez-faire politics and let them eat cake of the monarchs at the time. And this is what I get into with Queen Victoria. Of course, this goes back because until I think Edward VIII was the first British monarch or English monarch that wasn't defending, because the way this, you had the Romans that collapsed, so they left a void in Europe, and that's where you had feudalism that grew up, and then there had this consolidation of different powers and nation states that grew up, but they were headed, that's how you had to coordinate and keep peace between all of your feudal lords, and not have them constantly warring, and that's how your monarchs came, and they would be protecting this. I mean, you had so many different invasions from so many different places, but it did come from the necessity to protect populations, certain regions. So as I say, we can keep on with the wars. Then Henderson Inches was another, I'm not sure who he is. Charles Cutter, not sure. Cutter sounds familiar. I think that I've seen that, and amongst the founding fathers. And Reverend, of course, he wouldn't have been, he would have been later Reverend Joseph McKean. Now, apparently, Reverend Joseph McKean was the antagonist in this story. Now, this is where I get into the bullying, and this is Harvard, that started from the very beginning, and this whole frat house, good old boy, and hazing and bullying, and you got to be a member of our club and drink the Kool-Aid stuff. So what happened was they one guy who was very studious, and he had a room up above one of the other, which would have been Reverend McKean. And so Reverend McKean, they had a pig in his room. And when the other guy, they don't name him, was upstairs in his room studying, McKean would pull on the ears of the pig and make it squeal. But then he'd move him out through the window, and the pig would be outside. I'm sure he had his co-conspirators there. the guy would come running down because he couldn't concentrate with the pig squealing, and McKean would just be sitting there with his book like nothing had happened. This is gaslighting and bullying of somebody who's studious by a bunch of tricksters who don't want to be studious. And this is our places of higher learning and our ruling elite and how they conduct themselves, and the offspring of the founding fathers. So I thought that was an interesting little tale that goes to show how this whole, because a lot of the sexual assault that's going on in colleges, it is this old boy network, let's be buddies and you can do anything you want and we're going to protect you, and that's the whole hazing. I mean, see, at the British school, at Cobham, it wasn't bad at all. I mean, the upper form girls, they didn't really, but like my older sister's school, some of the stuff that she told me, the hazing of because the upper form girls had a lot of power over they could hand out punishments, and so my older sister's school, they used to tell the girls to stand behind the TV while the upper form girls would be watching the TV, all of them in this room, with their face towards the wall and the back and while all of these girls are watching their TV, and in the back of this girl, and she's got to stand there as long as they tell her. I was like, you gotta be kidding. They allow that? I said, no. Well, thank God that's not going on. So the hazing stuff is not, it does originate in not just Britain, but in Europe, and that mentality, and which of course is not going to produce a ruling elite that is very egalitarian and concerned with the good of their country, and instead of let's have a good time. This is one of the exclusive clubs at Harvard. So Joe married Rose Fitzgerald. And I always wonder, Fitzgerald, because F. Scott Fitzgerald. I'm sure it is the same branch going back to the old country, to Ireland. But if it's F. Scott Fitzgerald family is from Minneapolis, so they might be distant cousin. As I say, all of these families, it's you go back and back and back and back. They're you can trace the roots, and you can also see the dysfunctional branches compared to the functional branches, and why they were dysfunctional, and why they versus functional. If you start looking into the profiles and histories, of course, with the British or the royals in Europe, you get a whole slew of information, and there's books written all over the place. Kennedys as well, a lot of books. And I mean, you just show the dysfunctionality of that family and how it's trickled down. I mean, this is because that one getting too many people in the Kennedy family. Because, oh my Lord, Joseph Jr. didn't have any kids. I mean, he passed away. He was killed in World War II. JFK only had 2. Rosemary, they lobotomized her because she didn't fit in and she wasn't liked. Kathleen, it doesn't look like had any. Then Eunice Shriver, she married Sergeant Shriver. They had, let's see, they had 1, 2, 3, 5, it looks like. Then Patricia married Peter Lawford. He was the part of the Rat Pack. Rat Pack in Hollywood was Frank Sinatra, Jerry Lewis, Sammy Davis Jr. was part of that. I forget if there was another one, but they were, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and Ocean 7. That kind of, how shall I say, brands them as the new Rat Pack of Hollywood. And, it's the same dynamics that was going on there. Oh, yeah, Hollywood has had its hand in this melting pot of chaos that everybody has produced. So they had, I've finished this one. I think it's 4 that they had here. But then, of course, Robert and Ethel. What is it? 11? Gene, this is the William Kennedy Smith case. Of course, he was let off, but that was a rape in Florida. I think that was back in, I think it was still when I was in the States. So that would have been back in the 80s. Or maybe after, and I found out about it after, I'm not sure, but Palm Beach. But see, in his case, it wasn't, this girl wasn't from West Palm Beach. She was from East Palm Beach. So she did get some notice from the whole police. However, of course, it was, swept under the carpets by the courts, as is habitual custom. Carrie Kennedy, same thing happened with her. She had an accident. I don't know, it was what substance it was, but this is just your perfect example of those following the lead of the Astors and the Vanderbilts and wanting to become part of that Gilded Age, which was complicit. Was it Joseph? Because what happened with Joseph was that he did go to college, and then he much more highly educated than his father, and he became, because it was the bank of, what was the name of the bank? Oh, where is that? I didn't mark it down, but there was a bank that his father had a lot of interest in, as well as the whiskey. So as I say, he had started divesting from just his, well, he probably made a good profit off of his saloons, bought interest in this bank. as I say, I forget, Bank of Boston, I want to say, but I'm not sure. And they were like gonna go bust, and he saved the day, and then his son Joseph became the managing director of that. And then his son Joseph got into Wall Street, made a lot of money there. But again, was smart and got out before the collapse came. So the Kennedy family did not suffer, whereas the rest of the country did. They were, living the high life still in Hyannis Point. Yes, he was smart. Kudos for smart, but you're being complicit to the rise of, let's see, that at that time, I think he was also investing in steel. Maybe that was Joseph later on, but complicit to the money pool, because the Americans and the British, all the industrialists, were raking in lots of money with their deals with the Nazis in Germany. So they helped empowered them until, oh my Lord, wait a second, they're going to come after us. They're going to take our land and our resources. They're going to invade us as well. So we better do something. Then, of course, there's Ted Kennedy, who is, that's the Chappaquiddick. How he got in an accident. He was driving, obviously, under the influence, and went into the water, and the girl died. And he left and abandoned it because, of course, the scandal of being found with the young girl. Yeah, well, as I say, that's definitely not first degree murder, and then he becomes a senator, and it's like Juan Carlos, who shot his brother when he was 18, and his brother was 14, but it's all just swept under the carpet. So then the other family that I've been looking at, as a case study of immigrants and immigrant populations, and how these families have either contributed to the good of the country and the general welfare, or to their own fame and fortune, and enriching themselves and living the American dream. Because, as I say, the American dream of the original colonists was not to come here and go shopping at outlets. It was not to come and get rich. It was for religious freedom and freedom of speech, freedom of thought, for a more family, because as my father always told me, our family's been fighting this paradigm since Elizabeth I, and that goes back to Thomas Wilcox and admonitions to Parliament. And this is exactly when the British Empire really started. It started a little bit under her father, but really took off under her. I think, Francis Drake Scott had a lot to do with that, but it really did take off with her. Now, it was originally, a lot of it was establishing trade routes. So I have to go more deeply into the British Empire and that trajectory. But it seems that the whole trade routes angle, well, no, because then we have I'd have to look into that trajectory, and you'd have to go into the laws, you'd have to go into a whole bunch of stuff. Which this is where I could use a whole slew of you kids and turning the tide a little bit about what women's studies is about. Oh my goodness, when I started reading the feminists' books on their theories and ideologies, I was like, what kind of gobbledygook academic BS is this? You guys are just as bad as a lot of the other academics out there. You just jumped on the bandwagon and produced your own gobbledygook. I mean, a lot of it is these big wigs. They give another name. It's just like with the language. You learn the jargon, it's not so complicated. And you realize that all of their ideology, and I'm, as I say, I'm talking about all these freaking PhDs and MBAs who never graduated from kindergarten, and who are experts, and who are, in the think tanks, and I mean, the pretension is nauseating. It really is, really, really, really. So with the Cuomo, in fact, it reminded me very much of, I was watching Governor Mario Cuomo. He was giving a speech, and he's obviously retired by this time. He's older. It was, he's giving this nice speech at the Irish American Association or so. Look, the support that Andrew Cuomo has gotten from Kerry Kennedy and the Kennedy family, and even his daughters, which, if they were really about human rights, they would be as upset over this case as I am, instead of silence. And I think even telling, reinforcing the idea that Andrew Cuomo has something to be ashamed of when he doesn't at all. The little ladies attacking him should be the ones ashamed. But so this is another example of the family, and what I was looking into. You had the Irish immigrants, and then the Italian immigrants came in pretty much a wave after that, and that again was from extreme poverty in southern Italy. But those Italians that came in, it wasn't like with the Irish, and I think that's also because the Irish, I mean, they had nothing to go back to. I mean, everybody was starving so bad. But Southern Italians, I guess it was bad, but not as bad. And a lot of these would go back and forth and come for several years. I mean, you see that with immigrant populations as well. Now, they make more money here. They can make good money here and even send it back to their families and help their families in the home country. But it was something of maybe birds of passage, something like that. And so they were back and forth. Now, that was the case in Cuomo's family. And So as I say, there was some back and forth there that I saw some articles. So this would be Andrew Cuomo's grandfather, Andrea Cuomo, in 1901 to 1981. So he was born in Italy. His wife, Immaculata Giordano Cuomo, 1902 to 1995. So then you have his father, which is Mario Matthew Cuomo, who he, as I said, I was listening to a speech he gave. Very, very, you can tell, I mean, this is another thing. You can tell a lot of things when you actually listen to people and watch their body language. Charming old man. And he was telling a story about his mother, who would have been the Immaculata. And he had become governor of New York. And she, at first, okay, he becomes a lawyer, because I mean, they're from a poor family, and her son is going to become educated and a success, and not a laborer. And so he gets a law degree, and he was saying he had some successful law degrees, and he had said to his mother he was going to go into politics to give something back to the country, that he had a successful career. And she's like, and they explained to her, I'm going to go into politics also so I can become a judge, because for her, this is like the top. He's got a long robe, and he's a very important person. So he becomes governor of New York, and because she never learned English. She reminds me of my ex-husband's grandmother. And so she never learned English. And so she comes to the speech, and he says, everybody please clap afterwards, so she'll know that I've been a real success, because she yeah, a tough mom on me. And I know that see, being a tough mom is not, well, we need to encourage our kids a little bit more, but you have to understand the time and period. And so everybody goes afterwards. He finishes speech on economics, and everybody claps. And he said, Mom, did you see how everybody clapped? And she said, yeah, they clap because they're too long. That reminds so wrong to me and Mimi Cutterman. I just had to crack up. But see, those old salt mothers, aren't many of those around anymore. That no matter how high you rise, you're still just my little boy. Was gonna have to answer it to his mama. So it was very, so as I say, just and then I looked at his wife Matilda, her profile, and she worked with women's and children's issues, and obviously very dedicated to her husband, his career, her children. And I mean, well, Chris, it's also Chris's baby. And I saw photos of, family photos of them when they're young. And you can definitely tell that Chris was the little baby because he comes, yeah, his older sister. So the eldest is Margaret, 1955, Andrew, 57, then Maria, 1960, Madeline, 1964. And she's very, I get it. You want to point a camera at somebody in my family, go ahead. There's lots of them out there. Leave me in peace. She's, although a family lawyer, Madeline, you got to know what's going on in family courts. Tell your brother Andrew that Houston, we got a problem. So as I said, and then Chris, he was born in 1970. So, he, as I say, he's a little baby who came, and that usually in that situation, they're rather spoiled because he's 15 years younger than his older sister. And let's see, that makes him 6 years younger than the youngest. So that also makes him into a little baby toy. Particularly if his sisters have any maternal instincts and stuff. Because he's in with CNN, and CNN is not sitting pretty with me at all. I mean, I don't know who's in worse trouble, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. Well, it's a matter of a couple of points in a high stakes game that really is irrelevant. But I mean, it is a family who, let's see, the oldest, she's a radiologist, author on health issues, cancer prevention. Huffington Post is in water, but I mean, she's an author on health issues. I mean, everybody's writing about all of this, but we do. Oh, she was honorary. She got some awards: Association of Italian American Educators, National Organization of Italian American Women, Order of the Star of Italian Solidarity by President of Italy. I mean, obviously concerned with a lot of the issues that and particularly the Italian community, which, I mean, with my own global expat stuff, it is about families that are, going from one country to another. And my point with a lot of these ladies is it's not just to go to another country to go shopping and take advantage of, the opportunities afforded you. It's also to give something back, which, I mean, as I said in the video, Mario Cuomo had said that he explained to his mother why he was, not going to be just about making money, and that, he had a decent living and wanted to give something back to the country. And if everybody was like that, we wouldn't be where we are today. So let's see, she had 2 different marriages. and 2 daughters, each from a different one. Then Andrew Cuomo, of course, married Kerry Kennedy, has his 3 daughters. I did see this also on his Wikipedia page. Well, he was the campaign manager for his father as governor, and he was known as the enforcer, and his dad was the nice guy. Yeah, I don't know. I guess some people might be calling me some pretty bad names by this time, but everybody implements, and I'll go back to my farm, no problem. So I also saw, he was involved in or initiated investigations for corruption and fraud. That's my specialty. So anybody who does that is gets a star from me. So 2009 kickbacks for New York investigators, SEC Commission, Attorney General, and Attorney Generals in dozens of states. Yeah, we need a deep throat type of investigation there. Real problem. And I want to know where the IMF is on all of that and why they want to silence me. Houston, we got a problem. You don't need to just train the regulators. You need to make sure that the regulators have a brain and some integrity instead of just, oh, we're going to train these idiots that you all hired. Let's see. I guess a case against the United Homeless Organization for using funds for, salaries, parties, charities, whatever, and benefits, not services, to homeless. Oh, this is rampant in the NGOs. I don't know how many NGOs, domestic violence, human rights, women's rights, just the list is unending of NGOs and think tanks that need to be investigated for this type of stuff. It's rampant, absolutely. I mean, of epidemic proportions. That's why, as I say, my war on domestic terrorism, I got a PayPal button on there, but I've never gotten any money, and I don't solicit any money, but I'm headed towards the streets. So of course I would accept, but I don't have an NGO. I haven't set myself up as an NGO because the nonprofit world, you're rife with conflict of interest. Everything that I do, my YouTube channel is not monetized. Everything that I do, obviously I have to earn a living, and that's why I have to work 9 to 5 jobs. But all of my research and all of my activism work, I don't make any money off of. Believe me, I wish I wasn't a human that needed to actually eat and have a roof over my I don't know, people seem to think, I don't know. So there's all this Usernet 2008, combating child pornography. Let me count the ways where I'm all over that stuff. And again, not just drips and drabs, but deep throat type stuff. Oh, student loan. Colluding universities and banks to increase interest rates on for the so the university also direct the students towards higher interest rates. Oh, we need to get rid of managerialism, the whole student loan stuff, the money that's gone in to, and it's mainly the exclusive Ivy League schools, but I think it's you know, the others are jumping on bandwagon with the PhDs and MBAs. No, we need 2 and 4 year college education for all of our kids, like we used, like high school was pushed after World War II. Our workforces are getting older. They're going to stay in the workforce longer. And the world getting more complex. The kids need to learn more things, but they need to learn above all how to think and be curious about what they're learning instead of just getting a freaking diploma so they can cash in. That's all it's about. So criticize former governor administration, a Democrat, from spying on New York Senate major leader Joe Bruno with police detail. The shenanigans. Oh. That's so typical. It's not even funny. As I keep on saying, I don't have to spy on anybody. I don't. All I have to do is invite their wife, their mistress, or their secretary over for tea, and they'll spill the beans on everything that I want to hear. Or the gossiping, little Gladys Kravitz in the community. You'll get everything that you want to hear, and then some. Now you're gonna have to put it all together, but I can assure you it's much more formative. You get those little ladies, the gossiping ones, who just love to spill the beans on everybody and everything that they know about what's going on in the community. We could get rid of, all of our spy technology and everything. I promise you, it's better intel. Now, as I say, then you got to sort through that, and that's kind of where a computer brain of the ruling class women come in that can decipher what the hell the cackling hens are talking about between all of their. And believe me, a lot of it is fake news, misinformation, propaganda campaigns, because they want to bring down some bitch. But see, if you know who all of the players are and how they're, where their motivations are, their little discourse that's intended to turn you against that person or the other person, it's actually very enlightening about them. See, social sciences, they've gone all over wacko with the academic people in social sciences, where that originated, like cooking, fashion styles, anything that didn't have to do with eating and sitting in front of a huge screen watching football games. The women were the originators, and the men have just tried to follow suit in their efforts to not, be Neanderthals. Even if you look at the legal process and the court systems and procedure, moms have been doing that since history began, and how as have the ruling elite and the queens. I was recently looking, yes, in the pack of cards, a king trumps a queen, but, and I've never really played chess. I don't even really know how, but my understanding is the queen in chess is the most important. She's the one that you really, you know, when you've taken the queen, you've taken everything. You've won the game. Because her function of gossip, if you will, because it's just rhetoric. I mean, any damn fool can walk into a room and say anything that they want and say, you know, drink my Kool-Aid, and if everybody drinks the Kool-Aid, well, then that's the new normal. Which the Cuomo case, Front Sandra case, is Kool-Aid from feminists. So I'll finish up with this, but I looked at the function of gossip, because one of my favorite reports that I read on expat wives was a study. It was Danish women, oil company in Saudi Arabia, expat women. And they live in these compounds and enclosed compounds. And, you know, there they can pretty much live as they do in the West without any bothering them. Of course, if they go out, they need to cover themselves. And so they pretty much isolate themselves in these compounds. I mean, they've got, you know, swimming pools and everything that they and their children really could desire in terms of material comforts. But, and, you know, this was an anthropological study, and this woman went, she interviewed all of the different wives. But one of the things that I loved in the report was that the gossiping, since these women were in clothes and really had nothing else to do but to hang out at the country club and gossip and have lunch and you know, all of that. I mean, I'm sorry, if I had ended up there, I would have been in the drab with a driver. And anybody who complains about having a driver, you need to have your head examined. You give me a driver anywhere in the world, and I'll have to fight with the driver, particularly in an Arab country. I mean, I've driven in Paris and Madrid, and in a tiny little Gulf, and I can zip around like the best of them, and I know how to drive in Southern Europe, and I can even get through l'Arc de Triomphe without having an accident. But I would say, yeah, I mean, okay, Rome, I do Madrid, but I have to get to know Rome before I'd even try that one. But you drive in Southern Europe, you better learn to use your hand. It's a lot of sign language to everybody who's fighting out there. I mean, you talk about your war zones. So you want to give me a driver? I thank God I didn't have to drive in Bogota. Oh Lord. They had what was it? Tiene huecos. They have potholes. Even for the airplanes in the air. Oh God, that was a funny one. But so yeah, give me a driver anywhere I go. But I mean, I'd have to be involved in some interesting projects for me to end up in a country like that. But stick myself in a country club, you know, enclosed compound, I'm like, no. Can't. I think I'll prefer to go to Moscow with the cold than that. That was on the table one time. But I said, okay, but I need at least 3 fur coats And anybody who doesn't want fur, excuse me, you go and live in these freezing temperatures. Thank you very much. You know, animals have more rights in this country than children do, because all of this animal rights, and vegan living, and crazy stuff. So, and gossip. What are social media campaigns? What are think tanks? What do they do on Capitol Hill in their debates? It's essentially gossip. I mean, okay, maybe a little bit more intelligent, not much these days. I'm not so sure of even that. Then what you're going to hear from a bunch of cackling hens at a country club, or you know, some dinner party or cocktail party. That's only almost the 10%ers these days and 1%ers. But essentially, it's dialogue and it's gossip. I mean, okay, your gossip may be based on evidence and fact, which, if any of these ladies had a brain, it would be, because 80% of what comes out of a man's mouth is what a woman has filled his head with. You know, maybe his mother, but this, you know, women, they do run the social order, even if there's a whole slew of them who have gotten into the workforce and making money, and so now, you know, they're in power and control, and the rest of us are silenced. But you know, gossip, and I mean, look at Nancy Reagan. She waltzed into Washington and said, just say no to drugs. Well, she's popping all sorts of pills, pharmaceutical pills, and starting the new Jim Crow with the escalation in military spending. So, you know, gossip can do a hell of a lot more harm than any armies, and even a whole slew of lawyers with suitcases. That's from The Godfather, Mario Puzo. So, function of gossip, Torres. Intimacy to sharing experiences and feeling like you're on the same page about others. Gossip can stave off loneliness and or facilitate bonding and closeness, and serve as a form of entertainment. Well, yeah, that's all we get, entertainment now. Yeah, bonding and closeness. Well, yeah, it's a bunch of little Machiavellian game players who are conspiring to oust somebody that they don't like, or for, you know, whatever reason. It can be very detrimental. Stave off loneliness. Well, yeah, nobody wants to gossip with you because they don't like you and like what you have to say. That's why you have to, in these little cliques that control. It's 90210 basically. You know, Aaron spelling 90210 BS that of the golden age, that everybody is, you know, let's just party, we don't want to deal with any of life's problems, not our children, and not, you know, the world's problems or anything. We're really happy here in our little ivory towers, and you know, imaginary world of Alice, where all we do is go shopping and everything's gonna work out. And I loved Lee Iacocca's book, Where Have All the Leaders Gone? You guys think you just keep on chugging along, everybody in Washington, and we're gonna save the world. We have no freaking idea how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna save the world. So, can also help to socialize newcomers into groups by resolving ambiguity about group norms and values. Sure. Listening to the judgments that people make about the behaviors of other helps the newbie figure out what's acceptable and what isn't. I totally agree. And that's why, I have always supported the Expat Wives Club and served on the board and served as president of Bogota when I was there, because it is important for these women to have a support network when they come. And believe me, oh my Lord, I absolutely adored just getting together with women when my kids were toddlers, because I didn't have any other contact with any other adult. And once a week, you got together and have a cup of coffee while your kids romp around on the floor together. And you can actually, talk to somebody who's talking back to you. Because a lot of mothering when your children are infants are talking to a person that doesn't talk to you. I mean, that's the whole object of getting them to talk. And obviously, if they don't have that stimuli, and again, why, all of this is very important for somebody to be minding the store while the breadwinner is earning the bread. So why people gossip at work: fear, belonging, intimacy, desire to work with others who carry their own weight. Well, that was my experience in DC since I've been back. I was going to say at the IMF, but it's been everywhere. Oh, it works both ways, because I can tell you, there was lots of gossip going on between me and the other people rolling their eyes over what management was doing. And me going, oh my freaking God, you gotta be kidding me. This is having it all. We're actually going to get into the courts, because I will get there at the end of the day. May end up on the street in a tent before that happens, but we'll get there someday, you people. Because you people are freaking crazy. Things were dysfunctional in the 80s. I mean, I don't know, like in the restaurant business, at least the people who worked there were kind of sane. Nowadays, maybe those people just here to cash in. Oh, they're pissed off at the chaos that's going on, but they're getting their diplomas or whatever and making too much. I mean, everybody in Washington is making too much money off of all of the partying to have any incentive that it stops. There are too many people who are profiting from the situation. That's why I have a case against everybody under RICO. Enables social connection and helps people learn indirectly about the world based on other people's experiences. Yeah, I opted out of the game and got off the freaking Titanic when it started in the 80s. But I learned a lot. I wasn't sitting around and only frickin' country club like all you little ladies in Washington here and going shopping. Sure, I shopped, but it was, artisan products. It was this, it was that. It was not, let's go to Target and see how much like what electronic stuff can I get at the cheapest price so I can sit there doing nothing. As I keep on saying, oh, the boat has sailed. Yes. Well, guess what, everybody? The boat that you got on is a Titanic. You left me at the docks holding the booty. Because when your ship sinks, guess who's left? So yeah, I opted out, but saved my skin. Scandalmonger. Person who spreads malicious gossip, blabbermouth, etc. Oh yeah, that's status quo these days with really not late, I think everywhere I know. Root cause of gossip. Malicious fake news. Fake news. I have to admit, I used to laugh when Trump would come out. Fake news, fake news, fake news. I'm like, all of you guys are fake news. Is the pot calling the kettle black? It's always jealousy. Fundamentally, you get the malicious attacks by these bullies. It's their inferiority and it's jealousy. Isn't that one of the greatest sins? And I think God had a reason for that one. The more successful, attractive, kind, self-assured the person is, the more people will gossip about you. They tried to do it to bring you down and build themselves up. Totally. Type of people who gossip. Gives them a sense that they possess secret information about another person, which gives them a sense of power. I mean, on occasions, see, this is what happens. My favorite was the Spanish women in Bogota from Banco Bilbao Vizcaya, the wives there who spent their entire time at the country club and didn't like it that I didn't brown nose them. They didn't like me because I had to always be doing something. I found out years afterwards. But on occasions, if you actually do something in this world, people will make up all sorts of stuff. And on occasion, some of the stuff would get back to me. And I would always just have to laugh and go, my Lord. First off, if you people knew anything about my life, you wouldn't believe it. And second off, if you want to know something about me, what I'm thinking, or why I am doing something, come and ask me. Don't make up some bullshit that you've pulled out of somewhere out of your little la-la land that you live in. Because that's what it is. Got a problem with me? You got a problem with my life. I mean, first off, if you're sitting around judging what I'm doing, what you need is to look in the mirror and get yourself a life. Because I get a lot of stuff done because I don't go around looking what everybody else is doing. I do my own thing. And, a lot of times people don't like it, but I do it based on what's the right thing to do and what the evidence before me. Yeah, sometimes I make mistakes because sometimes I don't have all of the evidence. So, people who, all of you jealous people who go around spending your entire life gossiping, whether it be attached to your Facebook page or wherever, go get a life. I mean, the only reason I'm out there on Twitter and Facebook and is due to my activism work. Otherwise, sure, I mean, I would have a page, but and also I did, having lived my entire life from one place to another and knowing people and having family all over the place, all over the world. Yeah, Facebook is great because I go on and scroll and keep up with people, what they're doing, or photos and different things. Having to go and get a stationery, write a letter, go to the mail, the post office, or and like we used to have to do when I was little, which is obviously much more time consuming and much less effective. So, there is a good place for the internet, Facebook. I mean, the platform I had for the internet is basically the same idea as Facebook, LinkedIn, TripAdvisor, and Yelp.com, but for families, for moms. When you go to a new city, you need to buy a lot of stuff. And you need to know where you can get some diapers that don't leak and this and that. And so that nitty gritty and that, mundane information is extremely important, but also the other, making people feel welcome and integrating them and informing them about the culture and communities that they're coming into, while at the same time advancing and defending the rights of your constituency. It goes both ways. God on gossip. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. And a perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. I liked those two. Yeah, a gossip betrays confidence. Yeah, well, see, this is the thing. You tell me something in confidence, and it'll never pass my lips. However, in the past 15 years, with everyone, as I keep on saying, it's kind of like the FBI agent who comes in and shows their badge and says, "I'm here on official business. You still want to tell me that? That's not confidence." Yeah, and family, friends, whatever. No. I've been extremely clear on that one. So, then gossip versus venting. Gossiping focuses on trashing people or exposing true personality. Venting is telling someone how your friends' actions hurt you. Gossiping focuses on negative qualities and insulting friends. Now, this I had in here because I'm bizarre. This sounds to me like something coming from the feminists. Gossiping focus on trashing other people, venting is telling someone how your friend's actions hurt you. See, there's so much focus on, and this is in with the me you can't see movement. I also saw this was with the Winters groups. That was in the workplace bullying. They did a workshop, respectful workplace. It was over a 2-year period. After the second one, the first one of the economists, woman, she walked out. She said, "Was that to fill a quota?" It's this type of nonsensical gobbledygook. Venting is telling someone how your friend's actions hurt you. Well, venting can be other things as well. It doesn't just have to be about how somebody hurt you. I mean, I can vent about how somebody hurt somebody else. I can vent about global warming. I can vent about the economy. And perhaps it may, have something to do with me, but not always. Gossiping focuses on negative qualities and insulting friends. Again, no, not necessarily. This is to, instill the idea that just because you're gossiping, you're stabbing somebody in the back or you're hurting somebody. And then, of course, they say, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory." It really is all over the map. So this was something that I, as I say, I Googled this, and these things pop up. And a lot of times, and I'm seeing more and more of this type of stuff. Because, for example, gossiping focuses on trashing a person. Well, trashing them if you want to expose their bad behavior, of course. The house where I am right now, oh Lord, One Floor of the Cuckoo's Nest Revisited is what I have the playlist entitled, and it's just evidence for the courts of what's going on in here. And as an example, I mean, this is standard fare in every place I've lived in Washington since I've been here in the past 13 years, as well as worked. It's the same dynamics. So am I trashing these people? Of course I am. But I'm exposing, not just for my own evidence for the courts, but also look at how these people are acting. So am I trashing them? Well, yes, because they want to trash my life. So, there's all sorts of manners that the rhetoric is being dominated and controlled by these feminists to normalize and infiltrate these ideologies into the social order and what the norms are and what's normal. I mean, as I say, Washington, since I've been back. I mean, I left. It was so bad. I left. And I left the United States. This whole narcissism epidemic was just getting started. But now it's at proportions that is untenable. And why everybody in this country is just flipping out more and more and more. And the little ladies out there, I mean, I'm furious with these women's rights lawyers. Give me a freaking bank break. I've been knocking on their doors for over a decade to submit to the court, submit to the international courts. All of them, oh, yes, your gossip, your rhetoric, whatever you want to call it, right? We just love your social media campaigns, Carrie Bettinger Lopez. I really think that I came back to Washington to amuse myself and sit here with everything that I've gone through in every place that I've lived, every place that I've worked, so I could write. You're as crazy as my freaking mother. I'm as crazy as Jim Reed. Oh, this obsession with being a famous writer, with being a famous star, being in the public eye, and this is your life's dream, and the only reason why you haven't been able to accomplish it is everybody and everything around you. And therefore you're jealous and you just trash everybody around you because you've accomplished nothing with your life, and you're jealous of for anybody who has accomplished anything. That's the fundamental reason why everybody's going after Cuomo. I mean, I've seen that all over the place. I mean, this gets into my whole, thing about the Protestant North in Europe, the Catholic South, which, I mean, once I had a discussion with my ex-father-in-law, and he said, "What are you talking about? Stuff that you do work for its own intrinsic, satisfaction that it gives you. Nobody does that. The only reason anybody works is for money." I was like, okay, yeah, well, see, you just don't get into arguments with people like that, particularly when it's family members. And particularly, oh yeah, a Southern family, so that, Spanish, Italian, Greek, Turk, Moroccan, is all the same, believe me. They speak a little bit different, their language is a little bit different, their food's a little bit different. Oh, wonderful food. It's my specialty, yeah, definitely Mediterranean. But same dynamics. I mean, Northern Europe is the same difference. France is kind of like stuck in the middle. Sometimes Southern France, I think, wants to be more like their Southern neighbors. Well, Northern France is more their Northern neighbors. But it is that same, and we have the same thing, type of dynamics going on in the United States. Used to be North and South. Now it's with the immigrant populations, the demographics have changed, but it's the same conflict, and it's all for jobs. And if you produce jobs and you produce decent livings for people, they really don't become terribly upset. pretty docile in terms of public policy, in terms of the government. Sure, you know, and that's where the society steps in setting morality and not just another law for everything, but people in the community saying, no, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable here. You don't do that here. And that's what's setting. And if you go to a country, I mean, every country I've been in, including my own, I have some problems. And they're legitimate problems of the poverty I've seen, of the different social problems that I've seen, of how everybody's screwing up their kids. Everybody. You know, upper class, middle class, lower class. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Gotta go. As well as this narcissism stuff of we're going to provide expensive education for our kids, therefore they'll be a great success. The more money we pour into that, the better parents we are. It's doing a lot of damage, So there is a line of learning the norms of a country and you know, how to integrate in that country. And I mean, I've done it in France, I've done it in Spain, and I did it in Colombia. And I think everybody, you know, I did it in England. I think everybody I know in those countries would say, oh yeah. But that has never stopped me from drawing a line between the social graces and polite company, and not let's say staying on the line of civility with people, even when I totally disagree with them. And I don't care how high up you are. I mean, I'll even argue with God. Well, these days I'm in agreement with him. Oh, I've been an agnostic all my life and I haven't been in agreement, but these days I'm becoming more and more in agreement with him. So we're not as conflictual as we used to be. But there's a line between, oh yeah, I'll just accept anything that's going on here around me. As I say, the higher up you get into the social order, the more responsibility you have to see something, say something. So as I say, there is a line where accepting what's going on in your communities just because that's the way it is, you know, it is what it is. And no, I'll walk and I'll talk and I'll eat like if people want me to, and I'll use the knives and forks and learn all your little social graces and learn how to do things a little bit more diplomatically, and go on someone punching them in the face because I don't like them or I don't like what they have to say. But accepting anything that you people want to dish out, that's never been my MO. And you can, you know, walk that line if you have a brain and you think. my favorite was this old salty, this old general, high, big wig general, 5-star general. And he said, most important lesson I ever learned was some salty old sergeant when I got into boot camp. After I'd gotten out of the officers school, who barks in my face. And he says, before you open your mouth, think about what you're gonna say. And oh Lord, you can't imagine how many little ladies in this town, every color under the rainbow. And if there's some Marines out there, I'll say it to them as well, bark in their face. Shut your frickin' trap until you have something that's worth listening to and something intelligent to say. Oh, and you'll be sitting in the corner there for probably years before you figure that one out. I mean, this town is just getting stupider and stupider and stupider, as is this country. And how much money is being thrown into higher education and MBAs and PhDs who never graduated from kindergarten. No, I'm sorry. This is the Alice, Wonderland of Alice, and this country really needs a wake-up call. So that's my gossiping for today. See, I mean, this is gossip. Now I could sit here and tell you about recipes if you like, or a gossip about, some artwork, and it just matters what the theme of your gossip is. So, okay, that's for this evening. So I'm going to get it's actually, I mean, it really is very, very interesting. Oh, so much more interesting than the gobbledygook from the women's studies. But looking at the influence of women. I mean, I remember I was helping my younger son with his boring history classes. We have this whole timeline, and I just sat there going, oh God, all you people study is who killed who and who decapitated who. Of course, these kids are bored. History is a lot more than just that. And if you look at the women in history and the influence that they've had, good and bad, clarity is brought to this insane world, at least a little bit. Okay, well, have a nice evening. Good night.